Alright, welcome back to another RootBSD video. Here at the RootBSD channel, we love all things OpenBSD, but we also love all the other BSDs, we love GNU/Linux, and we love anything that's free and open source. So today, I saw a new upload by a YouTuber and Odysee content creator named Mental Outlaw, where he was going over his takes, his opinions on running OpenBSD as a desktop system. And although he did make some valid points, I think he also said some things that just were kind of not true in the video. So I just want to maybe, we're just going to do a reaction to his video today. And I'd hope to maybe correct some points or maybe give my take on some of the things he said. So just real quick, I am running OpenBSD on my laptop here. This is OpenBSD 7.1 current. And this is running baremetal. I don't use VMs. I'm not really a big fan of VMs, and yeah, I mean my system runs pretty great. Let's get right into it. So here, thought I'd try something different today. Instead of using YouTube, let's use NVIDIA's. I found a pretty good instance that I like that works really well. Okay. And before I get this video started, you might be wondering why I haven't been making a lot of content. And I also took down my Patreon page. It's just because I've been just kind of getting busy doing, life responsibilities, with my kids and with my job, and I've been also, I have my own apartment. I've been doing a lot of maintenance on that and cleaning, and so it just I haven't had a lot of free time to do extra stuff. But the opportunity came up today, and I do want to start making more content, but just not have the pressure that I'm going to make so many videos a week or anything like that. Just when I can get around to doing it, and I am currently still using Linux and FreeBSD on my desktop, and it's not because I have an issue with OpenBSD on the desktop. OpenBSD runs just fine on my desktop PC. It's just that my focus has kind of shifted a little bit more towards learning programming and just kind of more leisure activities and stuff like that. And just the Linux distro that I'm running is a little snappier than OpenBSD. And you see, it's not a big deal to me because I have multiple machines. I have like over 6 computers, so I have all different types of operating systems running at any given time. So I decided it's just best to use OpenBSD on my laptop for now. I might go back to it on the desktop. It's not really that big of a deal to me. I'll always use OpenBSD in some capacity. But like he said in this, he's gonna talk about in this video how OpenBSD is not the best option for the desktop. But it just depends. If your hardware supports it, if you have the right kind of hardware, you can have a nice comfy OpenBSD desktop with nice features. So let's go over this.
Alright, so this video is going to address something that I've been asked by a lot of people, which is why I don't use OpenBSD, or at least why I don't use OpenBSD on the desktop and make a bunch of content related to that, because I do use it for servers. This here is one I'm SSH'd into that I've updated to 7.1 recently. I made a video like a year ago talking about why I was looking to start using OpenBSD instead of, or at least in conjunction with, Linux servers. One of the strategies that I've pretty much settled on is using OpenBSD on the perimeter of a VPC.
So yeah, OpenBSD is fantastic for servers. That is one of the main usages people do use it for. But I'm going to tell you right now, the developers of OpenBSD, they are using OpenBSD as their daily drivers. They are dogfooding that operating system, and they do use it on the desktop and on the server, and they design it to be used on both. OpenBSD wouldn't ship with Xorg and other tools if it wasn't intended for desktop usage.
Like having it set up as a reverse proxy / firewall.
That's pretty based.
And I think I did make a video where I set up a desktop environment on OpenBSD, like in a virtual machine or something like that. but you'll probably never catch me actually using OpenBSD as a daily driver on a desktop or a laptop. And it's because I don't really think that OpenBSD is meant for that. So I'm on openbsd.org.
You see, I don't know why he has the impression that OpenBSD is not meant for the desktop, because OpenBSD ships. If you look at the ports tree, OpenBSD has not only does it come with a tiling window manager and a FE window manager, kind of like an old classic one that's just for history and tradition. But it has its own tiling window manager, CWM, which is actively developed. Not sure, like why would you need CWM on a server? So that right there, I don't know where he's getting that impression, but definitely OpenBSD. Okay, see, the thing you gotta understand about OpenBSD is that OpenBSD is basically a passion project by a group of friends that is spearheaded by Theo DeRat. And they are a group of friends that just happen to code and write this software and write this operating system. And it's a research operating system, and they do it for themselves. And we, as the users, we benefit from what they do. And a lot of what they do, their code and the things that they do, ends up in other operating systems. Just kind of as a byproduct, because it's very good code, and it can be used freely. It's open source code. But the thing is OpenBSD is not in competition with Linux. It's not in competition with FreeBSD. They're doing their own thing, and they really don't care whether you use their stuff or not. So just want to keep that in mind.
This is their official website. This is the front page. And, for example, the word desktop doesn't show up anywhere. There's no pictures of somebody using an OpenBSD desktop on the website. There's no pictures of...
See, this is a strange argument. All the developers are using OpenBSD on the desktop. I don't understand why do you need a picture of Theo DeRat in front of his computer giving you the thumbs up, in order to I don't know. I just think that's silly.
OpenBSD with a desktop environment or with window managers, there is a picture of...
And like I said, OpenBSD literally has its own window manager. It's called CWM, the COM window manager. It was made for OpenBSD.
Mounted server right here, which I presume is running OpenBSD, but still no desktops, no GUIs, nothing like that. Now compare that to something like Linux Mint, which, yeah, like if you didn't know anything...
Well, Linux Mint is marketed to be something that's friendly to people coming over from Windows, specifically, and maybe Mac OS. So, okay.
About Linux Mint, like if you just randomly went to linuxmint.com one day and you looked at this, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is for a desktop operating system. It's very obvious. Or even if you went to, artixlinux.org, right? So we go to ISO releases. And look, there's releases.
Yeah, but it's not very... OpenBSD is a system that is used by more advanced users that do know how to install and set up their own desktop environments. They don't need it done for them.
Come with a desktop environment already set up. For OpenBSD, we don't have this option. So even though it is possible, of course, to set up a desktop environment and use OpenBSD as a desktop, I mean, I've done that, at least the first part, setting up the desktop environment. But all of this lack of indications that it's a desktop OS, kind of...
Or Mental Outlaw, or maybe they just don't care about making it new user-friendly, or it's not advertising itself to be some kind of alternative to Windows or alternative to Mac OS. It's a UNIX-like operating system. Their main goal is security, but that doesn't mean they want security on your desktop too. They don't just want security on the server.
Clearly tells me that it's not. And if you are someone who is able to run OpenBSD on a desktop successfully, then you're a bit of a hacker. And mind you, a hacker is not necessarily someone who just puts on a black hoodie and sells ransomware.
I guess I'm a hacker. I mean, here we go. We'll do the litmus test, see how much of a hacker I am. Oh yes, we're in the Matrix. I'm just kidding. Alright.
Darknet. No, I'm talking about the OG definition of a hacker. which is a skilled person in information technology that uses their skills to achieve a goal or overcome an obstacle by non-standard means. So,
honestly, using OpenBSD is not like super hard or not. I would argue this. I would argue that some Linux distros are an obstacle and are hard to use and require overcoming. I mean, I have a friend that he can only use a Linux distro for about a week or two before he breaks it, and then he's like distro hopping again and again and again. He always constantly breaks. Like, that man should be like the beta tester for all the Linux distros, because he can just break any Linux distro he gets his hands on. Yeah, something like Gen 2 Linux. Even like you can do a very highly customized Arch Linux installation. It does require some skill. OpenBSD is super easy to install and run. It is made to be very like KISS, keep it simple, stupid. All its commands are simple. All its setting up your network and your Wi-Fi is easy. The only thing the reason why people have a hard time, for one, they try to use it like Linux, and it's a culture shock when they first install it, because they just maybe don't know what they're doing, or they just don't know the commands, or things are like but for the most part, if you have a basic knowledge of running a Linux system and you've installed Arch and you've done those kind of things like from the command line and terminal, running OpenBSD is going to be a breeze. The biggest thing that people don't understand is that OpenBSD does have a much more limited hardware availability, because they don't have the corporate backers that Linux has, and because they don't sign non-disclosure agreements. So that's why OpenBSD doesn't work fully or properly on a lot of hardware out there. Only a certain subset of hardware will perfectly run OpenBSD. So if you want to use OpenBSD outside of a VM, I always recommend that just buy a computer for OpenBSD. You don't have to break the bank. Just get in a mid-grade ThinkPad, or like a refurbished Dell desktop, or HP desktop. A lot of them will run OpenBSD. And I've in my channel I've told you that the Optiplex series runs OpenBSD. The Hewlett-Packard EliteDesk small form factors, they run OpenBSD great. Lenovo ThinkCenters run OpenBSD. So certain hardware does run. So you just you have to kind of plan ahead if you really want to get into that that Unix. And I always recommend you should get a ThinkPad anyways. ThinkPads are awesome, and OpenBSD also works on the those framework modular laptops. It works on the Huawei MateBook. If you ever want some to look up some good hardware, let's see here. If you want to look up some good hardware, I've been trying to get it switched over to start page. I don't know, it's not working right. But you can go to this man is an OpenBSD developer. His name is JCS. Oh, let me just type JCS OpenBSD. There we go. This guy's blog, right here. He gives you a lot of cool. All these products will run OpenBSD, and he even lists some of the things that do and work and don't work on there. So we can go all the way down here. So right here, you say AC adapter, yes. Ambient light sensor, no. Gyroscope, no. So he'll go through, but for the most part, you should be able to have a decent desktop system on these machines. So if you want to use BSD, you kind of got to think ahead and get something like one of these to run it. Or he also has, I'm trying to break myself using the mouse here. Let's see. He has a blog. Where's his blog at? I don't know. Has he gotten rid of his blog? Let's see here. There we go. So yeah, on his blog here, he actually built a fanless OpenBSD workstation. See if I can find it. So yeah, he tested it on the framework. Here we go. So right here, he built a fanless OpenBSD desktop, and this will give you a nice rundown of getting a more high-powered. This is running an AMD Ryzen, a more high-powered OpenBSD system right here, and it looks like a really nice nice computer. So he even did tests on temperatures and everything. So I'll put a link in the description. Definitely check that out. Also check out a channel on YouTube called Zaney, Zaney. Zaney built a fanless computer that runs OpenBSD, and he even got one of the newer generation Radeons, the AMD GPU models working just fine on there. And I mean, he eventually went back to Linux because he wanted to do more game development kind of stuff. But he has great OpenBSD content on there, and he has all the hardware, the parts that he used for the build for his computer. And his computer was really beefy, so you don't have to just get an old ThinkPad like me. I mean, I'm pretty bare bones. I don't really care. I don't need super like hardcore hardware. You know, if I had a lot of money, I wouldn't mind, but I don't.
So basically, it's someone who makes technology do things that it wasn't necessarily meant to do. Like, if you install and play Doom on a graphing calculator, you're a hacker. If you install Linux to a Nintendo DS...
See, this is such a weird argument. It's not a big challenge to install OpenBSD on a computer if the hardware is supported.
You're a hacker. And if you install OpenBSD to a desktop and use that as your daily driver, then in my opinion, you are a hacker, because I just don't think that OpenBSD is really meant for that. I think it's more meant for servers.
See, this is your opinion, Mental Outlaw, but you're wrong. And the OpenBSD developers will tell you that it is meant for both. It's meant for the x86 architecture and other architectures, regardless of how you're using that machine, but the ports have all the tools that you need to have a decent desktop system. Now, yeah, you're not going to be doing no AAA gaming, and there are certain use cases that just aren't going to work very well in OpenBSD, you know, that you might need a Linux desktop for, and that's fine. But for just, nerdy stuff like programming, or just having a very minimalistic desktop and maybe surfing the web and writing code and testing things, OpenBSD can do all that, and its ports tree has grown big time since over the past 4 years. There's added way more ports, more language frameworks and tools to use and stuff like that.
And not the desktop.
I mean, we even have an Electron port, believe it or not.
To be clear, I don't have anything against anybody who wants to use OpenBSD on their desktop or anywhere, really. I really don't get this infighting that there seems to be between some Linux and BSD users. Like, we really shouldn't be fighting a brother war. We should be getting together and shepherding people away from using proprietary operating systems.
As much as I agree with him about not infighting with Linux users, there are some people, man, that just... They just love. They are professional arguers, and they just are set in their ways. And one of them, this free software zealot that I was arguing or having kind of an online debate with on the Fediverse, and this guy just thinks that OpenBSD has a script when you first install it that will if your computer needs certain firmware to run devices like Wi-Fi, it'll install the firmware for you, just like any Linux distro will do that too. And he thinks that's just egregious, that's just terrible, and that firmware is malware. And he is just a hardcore free software foundation, Linux Libre boot kind of person. And we will never see eye to eye. And he thinks that OpenBSD is terrible and that it abuses its users. And I mean, that stuff. I've gotten to the point where I just feel like those arguments are just silly. Just like I always said, use the right tool for the job.
Something you should know about OpenBSD, if you're considering using it on a desktop, is that there's limited support for Wi-Fi. I mean, desktop, people think of a tower, but on a laptop, that might be a big deal to you. Limited support for Wi-Fi. There's not support for Bluetooth. There's very limited support for device drivers in general, like graphics.
So all your AMD and your Intel graphics GPUs are going to be supported. Even a lot of the newer generation AMD GPUs are supported. Just the only thing that's not supported is NVIDIA, because NVIDIA is closed source, and you have to ask NVIDIA to make drivers for you. Now, I know NVIDIA just recently released some beta open source drivers for Linux, but maybe we'll see some NVIDIA support come down the line on OpenBSD because of that, but it's going to take some time. And what he said about Bluetooth, the main reason that OpenBSD doesn't have Bluetooth is because the Bluetooth stack that they ported over from NetBSD just wasn't very good. It was old, unmaintained software. They removed it. It was not removed because of security, even though I know that Bluetooth does have security issues. It was mainly removed just because it was old and unmaintained, and it was not good code. And on Linux, the Bluetooth stack on Linux it's not good. It's not quality. It barely works. And I know this for a fact because and also I've been really getting into my Pinephone lately. I'm planning an upcoming video where I'm going to show off. I've been really getting into something called SimpleX Mobile. I've just gone like all in on SimpleX Mobile, and I freaking love it. It's completely changed my Pinephone experience, and I'm running SimpleX Mobile, the Sway version on my Pinephone, and I'm using Arch Linux, the Dreamers Embedded Dance Sticks build, and just like night and day. You guys are going to be so surprised when I show you how far I've come on the whole Pinephone thing. And I'm actually recording this audio on my Pinephone right now from the terminal. It's a terminal program, and I can see the spikes from, when you watch audio and you see the spikes from the audio. It's doing it in the terminal with ASCII characters. It's freaking rad, dude. So on this device, I have figured out how to get it to pair with my Bluetooth speaker because I stream music using a program called Quick Media. So I stream from my SoundCloud account because SoundCloud is really like sluggish and slow on the web browser on here, and it's not ideal. Or I use the CMUS, the terminal music player. But connecting to Bluetooth is just a pain in the ass, and I have to fight it sometimes for 20 minutes just if I want to get my speaker paired and get connected to Bluetooth and get music playing. And sometimes the connection's bad, and I have to redo the connection. It's constantly powering my Bluetooth module off, and I have to manually power it back on. And it'll just like disconnect in the middle of playing just randomly all the time, and it stutters. It is not. It's not like with my iPhone. The Bluetooth connection is just instant and generally is just like perfect. So Bluetooth on Linux is barely working. So to say that OpenBSD is inferior because of that it's a bit of a stretch. If we're being honest.
Graphics cards, peripherals, things like
also,
that.
You can certain Bluetooth dongle modules that plug into your USB do work with OpenBSD. So you're not like completely never going to be able to use like your Bluetooth headphones or your Bluetooth keyboard. You can use a dongle.
You can't install Steam, and you can't.
There is a Steam runtime library in ports, actually. And there is a program called fnafi that allows you to run some Steam games, believe it or not, on OpenBSD.
Install a lot of other software without using ports, which could compromise OpenBSD's security, which is probably the reason why you chose OpenBSD.
Okay, so now this is something that gets spread around that's completely just not true. And I used to believe this because I heard other people saying this. And then a lot of times people spread information that are not associated with the OpenBSD project, that are not OpenBSD developers, and this information is just patently untrue. Now, I was personally corrected in the comment section on our OpenBSD. I was corrected and told by an OpenBSD developer that there's nothing wrong with using ports. They all use ports. Theodorat uses ports. The ports are there to help the user. The ports are there for the user. You're not compromising security by using ports. Okay, that's just misinformation. That's completely not true. I understand why he's saying this, because people have been parroting like a parrot. People parrot things about OpenBSD, and it's just ridiculous. You know, you read something in a comment section on a forum, and then you spread it, and it just spreads like wildfire. But no, this is completely not true. The OpenBSD developers use ports and promote using ports. There's nothing wrong. The port is there for the user. I'm sorry. The port's
considered one of the world's most secure operating systems in the first place, instead of FreeBSD, which is actually meant for desktops. Look at that. We see it right there on the front page of their website. So if you can
I mean, why does OpenBSD need to say desktops on its website to convince you that people are running it on the desktop? That's just silly, okay? I don't understand. This is such a weird argument. Like, I mean, just look up hackathons, and you'll see all the OpenBSD developers running OpenBSD on their laptops and using it on, and they use desktop PCs to build the ports trees and to distribute binary packages.
OpenBSD working as a desktop OS, then more power to you. I mean, like I said, I consider you a hacker, which most people consider a huge compliment. But don't go hitting up the devs of OpenBSD to try to include support for Wi-Fi 6 or
okay, this
Bluetooth.
Is silly. Okay, the devs, as long as you follow proper netiquette on the mailing list, the devs are not like just total jerks. I mean, they have been harsh at times, but generally they're just harsh to people that have bad attitudes, that are asking, having ridiculous demands, and show up in there just asking, ordering everybody around and saying you need to do this or you need to do that because it's their project. Okay, they're not beholden to anybody. Now, but if you go in there not politely and say, hey, I have this certain piece of hardware, I was wondering if we can get some support on it, maybe somebody could look at it. They might tell you, hey, we're really busy, but if you want to, you can write some code for it yourself and submit it, and we'll take a look at it. If you're somebody that just is not a programmer, you can donate money or donate that actual piece of hardware to the OpenBSD project. If you send that piece of hardware to them, that's way more likely going to, they might, somebody might take up the challenge and write a driver for it. And there are people that are in the OpenBSD development community that they like to write drivers. They like to reverse engineer things and write code. So and there's really smart, computer science, college graduate kind of people. I mean, that whole team that ported OpenBSD to RISC-V for a college project for the University of Minnesota, those guys, there's people out there that do that kind of stuff. So this is such a silly thing. Why would you not, if you really wanted something really bad, if you loved OpenBSD and you had a piece of hardware that just wasn't working or needed a driver, why would you not politely ask or maybe donate some money or donate that piece of hardware with the hopes that maybe it might get a driver written for it, or why don't you make some friends? Make some friends with the OpenBSD developers, and maybe you're not the best C programmer, you don't really know a lot about assembly or C, but you could put a little bit of effort forward, and you might you never know. I mean, they're not gonna just give you the middle finger just because you are asking something on the mailing list. As long as you ask politely and you do it the right way. There is a level of netiquette. You just don't go in there demanding just everything like you're robbing a bank or something. This is a heist.
Or a lot of other desktop things in the kernel. I highly doubt that they're ever going to do that. And if they did, it would actually piss off a lot of OpenBSD users like myself, because Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on a server is retarded.
Now, OpenBSD has a bunch of Wi-Fi chipsets that it supports. Not as much as Linux, but it has a lot. You can let's see here. If we go to OpenBSD. Let's go to OpenBSD.org. And if you go to frequently asked questions, you go to networking, network configuration, and they have a list here on here. Let's see here. Here we go. OpenBSD has support for a number of wireless chipsets. Okay, why would if it wasn't meant to be used on the desktop, why would they even put this in here? This is silly. Look, here we go. All these devices will run on. They have drivers for OpenBSD, and if you click on let's see my model right here, the IW I run the IWN driver, the Intel Wi-Fi link. It goes through all the different types of hardware that this driver supports. So it's not as much as Linux, but there's a lot of support there. It's not like this covers a wide range of devices, and also a lot of if your Wi-Fi card is unsupported, you can use a dongle. There's lots of different dongles that'll work too. So you're not totally screwed if your hardware isn't supported. But anyways,
this is the reason why I started switching part of my server infrastructure, at least the internet-facing things, over to OpenBSD in the first place. Because on Linux servers, well, let me actually just show you. So this is a Debian server, which I was going to use for email, but I guess this will be a quick rant within a rant. Vultr refuses to open SMTP port 25. So I gotta find a for everything else, and I might just, for some reason, within the past...
this video has already taken longer than I thought it would.
All the different configs related to Bluetooth are either built in to the kernel, or
and they're not very good. Trust me, it's not. I don't know. I'm not impressed.
Module. Same thing, if we keep scrolling through here, I'll probably find a bunch of other wireless things that we just don't need.
Also, OpenBSD, the project, those guys are open. If you want to write Bluetooth code, submit a patch. Write some code. Okay? I mean, some people might be like, well, it's not for the average person. Yeah, nobody ever said it was for the average person. I don't know, it's a weird conflation. I don't understand why because it's not as featureful as, let's say, Linux Mint or the Linux kernel, because the Linux kernel also has millions of dollars from Google and Facebook constantly, and a much larger development team and vendors, and it's used in proprietary products like Android and Google, the Chromebooks and stuff like that. So there's a lot of corporate backing and need for these things to work for consumer devices. So OpenBSD just doesn't have that. It's a small project. It's like a passion project with a bunch of friends that are coders. Okay, it's not in competition with anybody. So I don't know. I don't get it.
Let's see. Yeah. So near field communication, right? This is another thing that's just there's no reason to have this on a server, but yet it's built in there. There's tons of things in this kernel that I just don't need for a server, and if I was using Debian on my desktop...
Oh, I see why he's saying. He's saying that this is why he likes OpenBSD on the kernel. I mean, on a server. But, okay, that makes sense. So, let's get back to this.
...to do. Also, most people using a Linux box, whether it's for a desktop or a server, they're not using a hardened kernel. So in case you didn't know about this project, there's another kernel, another version of the Linux kernel called Linux Hardened. Which
and if you want to harden your Linux installation to be more secure, there's a lot of stuff you can do, but it is a process, and there is a learning curve to it, and it's not something that you just flip on a switch and it's done. Just by installing the hardened kernel doesn't necessarily completely secure a Linux distro. The great thing about OpenBSD is that it's secure out of the box. It's ready to go secure. It's ready to go on the server and on the desktop too, as long as the hardware is supported. And it's made to be simple and easy to use.
Has dozens of options that we were just looking at.
I'm going to kind of fast forward some of this because this video is going a lot longer than I thought it would.
system. And maybe if you use a distro, I can't even think of any off the top of my head that ship with the hardened kernel by default. But maybe if you use a distro, you know, the few people that are setting up a VPS with that kind of Linux ISO are using the harder kernel. But most, hey, don't get me wrong, if you're using like version 4 or 3 or something.
Anybody that I know that is in InfoSec or does IT or hypervisors, I know that hardening and securing Linux for production would be a challenge.
Crazy like that way from a vulnerability in a kernel module. Attackers are going to go after the lowest hanging fruit. They're going to go for things like unsecure SSH, unsecured cPanels, or like if you're running WordPress, they're going to go after the people who have outdated plugins or outdated versions of WordPress, Django, or whatever server applications you're using. It doesn't change the fact, though, that the Linux kernel is very large and insecure compared to OpenBSDs. And that's why if I'm going to have an internet-facing box that people are going to be scanning, people are going to be trying to break into and do all kinds of dirty things to my poor little VPS, I want it to be running the most secure operating system in the world and have it do only what I want it to do.
Absolutely, and he makes a great point, and this is why a lot of people love OpenBSD. But I also want to add that OpenBSD there's other things about it other than the security. The security, even though it's a big focus, it's the main, driving force for the OpenBSD development. There's other things about OpenBSD that are great on top of the security. Mostly, in my opinion, it's the minimalism. Like, it's very, like you said, the kernel is very small. It's not as big as Linux. It has a less of an attack surface. But it's also just the command line infrastructure, the system administration that you do on an OpenBSD machine is way more simple and way more straightforward than anything you would ever do on Linux. Linux is a little bit more overcomplicated. It's like a lot more of like a patchwork of all these different third-party projects that are being kind of jerry-rigged together with bubblegum and duct tape to work together, and they don't always work together. Whereas OpenBSD, the whole operating system is compiled together under one source tree, and that includes the X server and all the core utils and the compiler toolchain and the kernel and the userland. It's all developed in one whole unit. It's not patchwork like Linux, and that's actually a really useful thing. It's a very cool thing. It helps with stability and with ease of use and less headaches and getting work done. So there's that aspect that people always ignore about OpenBSD, and they want to go straight to the security.
But my desktops, they're not openly accessible from the internet. So my main concerns with them is things like the web browser or potentially with email, right? Like, I should not be clicking on links and nonsense that's in my email box. There's some security overlap between servers and desktops, right? Like, I still use very strong passwords on both. I still use encryption on both. But for the most part, my approach to securing servers and desktops is pretty different. So don't hold your breath waiting for me to make OpenBSD desktop content. But if you do want to watch desktop BSD content and maybe learn how to use OpenBSD on the desktop for yourself, let me show you some content creators that can help you out with that. So this is Zani.
Yeah, my buddy Zani.
Not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but he makes a lot of OpenBSD desktop content. Like, we search for desktop, look at all this. He's got a new computer and a new Rice, which I think you can also download. So if you want to just like copy his config, which actually does look pretty clean. I watched like a couple of his videos just to see, and like you see he's got these long, maybe they're live streams or maybe they're just recordings, I don't know, but he's got obviously tons of desktop OpenBSD content. And then we've also got root.
Yeah!
So same thing. And this person clearly went to the Mental Outlaw Academy of based thumbnails, because just look at this. He's
Thanks,
utilizing the Apoos and the anime girls expertly. This guy, he might be able to teach the class himself. And he's also got an Odysee channel. So look at that. We don't even have to watch him on CringeTube. We can watch him on BaseTube. See, look at this. So you don't have to show Google that you're learning how to use OpenBased on the desktop. So go forth and consume desktop OpenBSD content from these guys. They're actually small channels, so definitely go show them some love. Both Zany and RootBSD. And
thanks, Mental Outlaw. I appreciate it. I appreciate the shout out, man. And I wasn't doing this video to make you look bad or anything. I just wanted to address some things and just kind of give my take on your takes. But always, I do love your content, Mental Outlaw. I love everything that you do.
Like I said, I'm using it for servers, like kind of on the perimeter of a VPC. So maybe I'll do some tutorials for OpenBSD once I've got things set up how I like them. Maybe I'll show you guys how to use it as like a reverse proxy, or how to use it as a VPN server. Maybe I'll do some PF tutorials, but it's going to be, dry, boring stuff. It's not going to be cool desktop stuff or like gaming on OpenBSD or anything like that. Like and comment, tag the algorithm. Subscribe to me on Odysee.
All right, yeah, that was cool. So I just wanted to address those points, and OpenBSD is there whether you want to use it or not. It does work on the desktop on supported hardware, and honestly, like I always say, if Linux is a better choice for you, then use Linux. And Mental Outlaw is definitely following the toolbox philosophy. He's using the right tool for the job, what suits him best, and that's what counts. And he's right. All this infighting and this, talking crap about, oh, well, because BSD can't do X, Y, and Z, it's crap. Well, it's not crap. The Linux kernel has issues too. The Linux kernel has some, and people or talk about how the Linux kernel is really big, it's really bloated, it has a lot of corporate interests and things like that are in there. So I'm not downing the Linux. I use Linux. I like Linux. I use it all. I use Linux and BSD, and I think they're based, and I think they're awesome. So my next video, see my big hobby thing that I've been on lately is my Pinephone. So my next video is definitely going to be about the progress that I've been making with my Pinephone, and I hope you look forward to it. I hope you got something out of this video. Subscribe to Mental Outlaw, subscribe to Zany, and of course subscribe to me. Hit that like button, subscribe. I did take down my Patreon because I just I felt like since I wasn't really working that much on the channel, it's not fair to take people's money. So I may bring it back if I get more serious about this channel again. But for now, this channel is just going to be kind of when I can get around to making content, and it's not going to be it's not like my life or anything. I'm not like trying to make a living off it or anything like that. I got a day job, and anyways, RootBSD out. Have a great day. Bye.